Welcome to another exciting edition of Tales from the Art Side. This is the second in a series of Bioshock inspired builds. We have already built the Big Daddy, now it's time to create the eighth wonder of the world, the Handyman. But before we begin, a word from our sponsors. Introducing Fink Manufacturing's latest vigor, Murder of Crows. With Murder of Crows, you can command nature itself and command a murder of crows to do your bidding. Remember, a life with vigor is a life that's bigger. Use of this product may induce explosive diarrhea, impulsive diarrhea, bad breath, gout, and death. Do not use if you are pregnant, planning to become pregnant, or know anyone who could get pregnant. Use as directed. I sincerely want to give a special thanks to my first Patreon supporters, Stephen Kicks, Casey and Travis Schilling, Charles FDX. I also want to thank all those that watch, subscribe, and share. Thank you. To get started, the first thing I did was gather reference from all over the internet, looking at concept art and game models, as well as from the very game itself. I want to give a shout out to a few of the artists that have worked on these games, like Rob Waters, Nathan Wells, Chad King, Adam Bolton, and all the artists involved. Great job, everybody. After gathering reference, I begin the model by sculpting the hands in monster clay. The plan is to sculpt one hand and then cast it in resin twice. That way I can get kind of a 2-for-1 deal out of the sculpt. Once I have all the fingers sculpted, I sculpt the palm of the hand and I use googly eyes for the rivets. This is something you'll recognize from the Big Daddy build. I still have thousands of these googly eyes laying around, so might as well use them up. After mixing the two-part silicone together, I brush on a thin layer. I then put them into disposable containers and fill the void with the remaining mold mixture. Once that is cured, they'll be ready for the resin. The normal resin that I used was getting old and was not setting up properly, but I had a bunch of leftover epoxy from previous projects, so I decided to test it out and see if it would work. It did quite well. There we go, 10 fingers. Now it's time to work on the knuckles. For the joints of the knuckles, I started using these electric connectors and then gluing a small one inside to reinforce it. But it has this shiny brass surface, so I'm using the super glue. And now normally this is a gun bluing solution. When you use it, use caution and follow the manufacturer's directions. But it does a great job at putting a dark patina on anything that has iron to it. As you can see here, really good aged look, and it won't scrape off like paint. It's embedded in, so it gave it this aged look for my knuckles. For the knuckles, I'm stacking those electric connectors together, putting a nut between them, and then binding them together with sort of a screw-on rivet. And there we go, a bunch of knuckles. Now I've got to get ready to glue all those in. But first there's some other parts to make. I'm going to take these plastic ping pong balls and as well as these golf balls and turn them into the joints for the elbows and wrists. After planning out a division for this golf ball, I'm going to cover it with epoxy putty. That will get rid of the dimples. It'll make sure it's nice and smooth. And what's nice is that golf ball's just big enough it'll fit over the ping pong ball and create a nice rotational joint. There we go. Have it nice and smooth and all my pieces for it. Next, I'm going to take this thread spool and build the upper arms and the calves. I'm only going to have to carve this or sculpt this once and then cast it, much like the way I did the hands. That'll enable me to save a little bit of time, and it really won't matter because it'll rotate and all those patterns will be hidden. There we go, getting ready to cast it, and I have all four, and I'll even use the original one. After a little cleanup with the rotary tool, get rid of some of the issues, and then it's prime time, baby. And no, not that prime time. It just paint prime. Oh boy! After getting everything primed, it's time to glue in all the joints that I built into the fingers, and also get ready to paint these. I'm using some flesh tones, but they're brighter than normal flesh tones. I want it to look like the porcelain hands that the handyman has. Starting off with the dark brown and then going with kind of this, I don't know, salmon color, and just layering these in, and then finally I'll put the final flesh tone over the top. This will give me kind of that depth, and I'm trying to get that old porcelain cracked look, not a natural flesh tone. And I think it turned out turned out quite well. There we go, all the fingers completed. Now it's just time to attach them into the palm. Now normally I wouldn't start with a hand being the basis of my project, but since he is the handyman and this is going to drive everything, this is going to be the scale, this is going to be the look, and so I started with the hands because it's going to be the basis for what this thing looks like. Here I took some little Christmas bulbs, and they're going to end up being the thumb joint, and after cleaning them up a bit, they're ready to go. And I'm filling them with epoxy. I'm taking all the ping pong balls, taking these Christmas ornaments and filling them with epoxy. That way I have a solid mass to put screws and things into, and they'll be able to hold the weight of the hands and the arms. At this point I'm going to do just that, start embedding screws into the hands. I'm just going to drill these holes and fill them with epoxy and secure those screws in tight. That way they'll screw right into the ball joints for the thumb and the wrist. Here I'm going to finish a few paint preps for the thumb joint. I'm laying down a matte iron color, then doing a wash of metallic silver, and after that putting down all the little rusty details with a terracotta acrylic color. Once those are fully painted, it's time to screw them in. Put a little dab of glue and screw them down tight. Those aren't going to come off once they're on, and that's the way I want it to be. These are going to be pretty heavy, and there we are, the hands all completed. Those were something. Look at the size of those things. You know what they say about a guy with big hands? Wears big gloves. Facts. So now it's time to start building the arms. I'm going to use these all thread as sort of the core for the arms. And now attaching them into those epoxy balls or those ping pong balls that are full of epoxy. I'm going to secure that with some more epoxy, lots of that. And I'm going to tear apart this old light fixture. It had all these great shapes on it and pieces, but the wiring had gone bad. So you'll see throughout this build how I use this. It'll be part of the arms and the legs, and all sorts of pieces. Great treasure trove of stuff. Here I'm cutting the pieces that will make the sleeves that'll go over the arms. These will be the knee joints, these parts that I'm showing you here. And other parts they'll make the legs. These will be the core of the legs, where the thigh between the knee and the ankle, so to speak. I'm using these old thread spools. They're gonna attach over those metal bars of the light fixture and form some knee joints. Just trying to use anything I can to get a nice workable joint. Look at that. Got the screw run through and just getting everything prepped. These took a while to plan out. A lot of fitting the pieces together and going back and forth. This is an old oxyacetylene torch that was broken and somebody was throwing it out. And for me as a trash basher, I'm like, you're not throwing that out. That thing's great. Here I'm going to cut it into several pieces. Remember, safety first. Hey, settle down. Oh, it gets so sensitive. There you go. Those make up a piece to the legs. I'm going to use these old dried out Sharpie pins. These are going to act as kind of a bushing inside those leg pieces and give me something to glue to for the thighs, I guess, if that would be the proper piece. There we go. Getting them all assembled. Low ring there. The upper thighs and there. That's pretty much it. Those are from the kneecaps up. Now it's time to start working on some body parts. I'm going to start with the hips and use this old ketchup bottle for the hips. I had already that shape built in, and so I thought, there it is. Oh, I think I'll use it. Begin to drill some holes in it so I can insert the legs. Do a little cleanup with the rotary tool, make sure my holes are the right shape and that they're properly centered. At first I was going to use these light bases, but I ended up using some towel rack holders, towel rack bars. They had this really cool shape to them. cut those down, and those are what I ultimately ended up fitting onto the legs. For the body, for the main torso, I'm going to use this Planters Peanuts jar. Cut that, and it had this nice round shape. Look at that, fit perfectly. Great. I love it when trash fits together. So there we go. At first I just tacked these in with a little hot glue, just to make sure it's going to work. Look at that. I got legs. Oh, he's got some sexy legs. Skinny legs. I ended up riveting those in. That way they were firmly attached to the hips. You'll see I'll use those quite often through this build, using a lot of rivets to stick those in. These bolts will act as a base to ultimately put the spine to. Now it's time to do the feet. I shaped the feet out of blocks of wood, and then used the foam to finish some details as they kind of the shape as it goes up the ankle a little. Do a little filing, forming, getting them the proper look that I want. And once they're to that point, we're ready to start detailing these. I'm excited about these feet. I've got some ideas I had some ideas on these, and they turned out well. For the base covering of these shoes, I'm going to use a scrap of bullhide leather. That leather has a real distinct kind of crackle pattern on it that'll look like leather, but it'll also look like it'll just fit in with the look of the handyman and the handyman's hands. On the toes of these shoes, in the concept art and on the game model, it's worn through as if that leather has been worn through to the toe, and so that's what I'm cutting out now. I'm removing some of the leather, using files to distress it, to make it look like it was actually worn off, and now the under base is exposed. For the soles of the feet, I'm using these little craft wood planks. In the art, it looks like there's 3 layers, and they look almost like they're made out of wood. They might be, but they're these 3 distinct layers. So I'm going to build these up and use this wood in the different pieces for the heels and for the front part of the soles of the feet. I'm cutting those out. That's how fast I cut these out. I'm really that fast. Anyway, so I'm using these markers to give me some of that distinct the layering, bring out the layering, and then just using regular wood stain. There we go. See, the layer effects came out really well. This was another dumpster dive. Somebody was throwing this out, and I'm like, what? Wait, no, you can't throw that out. I need that, and it's going to work perfect for this build. This isn't real leather. It's just a faux leather, but it has the same texture as the black bull leather, and so it's going to work really well for the white part. Here, I'm just making the other pieces and getting them glued on. At this point, I'm really looking at the concept art and the models and trying to build these shoes into something that mimics that look, and they're coming together really well. Here I'm punching in pre-holes for the brass tacks that hold the shoes on, hold the leather on, and preparing. These are going to be the heels of the shoes. Since they aren't going to be supporting any weight, they can be foam. After I get those shaped and I'm happy with them, again, I'm going to put the glue on and cover them with the black bull hide. There we go. Those are going to be nice. I'm inserting in some other kind of leather into the back side or the inner part of the heel, just to give it a more finished look so that the foam isn't exposed. Start gluing on some of the wood plates that I had pre-cut, putting a little leather lace around the edge to make a finished trim just to cover seams. Same thing on the heel. Now it's time to start to really make these shoes pop. I'm laying on a layer of black wash just to sink into all those crevices on the white and in the black. That'll give it that nice distressed look and bring out all those crackles. I also started to do a dry brush with a light or gray lighter than the black, and floating that over, it just really is starting to make those parts pop. Laying in stitching, painting and stitching, extra distressing on the toes to make them come out, and then the metal work underneath. These are starting to, I'm getting excited at this point that things are starting to come together on these shoes. Gluing the heels on. Oh, at this point I'm putting on a wood finish, and it gives that high gloss look, and it just really is making these shoes pop even on the leather. I liked it so much I put it on the hands to make it look like that old porcelain. Now with the feet done, I can finally start assembling all these pieces, putting these legs together, starting to get him on his feet. So here I'm just going to detail out some of the things that I hadn't gotten to before, and refitting everything. What I'm putting on there in the little blue bottle, the red stuff, that's a thread locker. I want to make sure that all my threads stay and nothing comes loose. Here, just assembling all those parts I've been building. A lot of these little brackets and things that I'm using to hold the pieces, hold the legs to the foot and so forth. These are pieces from that light fixture, and I'm just repurposing them in any way I can. There we go, legs and feet. For a bushing on the knees, I'm using these 12 gauge shotgun shell brass tops, and popping out the primers, the old spent primers. Now I'm prepping the braces. There's these big metal braces that go from the ankles to the knees, and I need to create 4 of them and get them shaped and prepped and make them look like metal. That's going to be the tricky part. I just had them in wood, and so it's going to be doing the usual priming and prepping, and getting all my paint in order. Once it's painted, I decided I wanted a few more details, so I used a marker and some other painting highlights to just kind of put some faux details into those leg brackets. Finally, time to start assembling these things. You see those 12 gauge shotgun shells, they're on the knees, the brackets, everything's finally coming together. The sad thing about this is these knees are actually built to be articulating, but I'm locking them up. I'm locking them up with glue so they can't get loose, because he's going to be so heavy. There's no way that he'd be able to support the weight if those joints weren't locked up. Tightening up all the bolts. Found these nice acorn nuts. They're gonna decorative acorn nuts, make it look finished. Here, putting in some rivets that go around the fleshy part of the ankle, or the calf. Just little brass tacks around the whole thing. There we go. It kind of look like Mickey Mouse, got little Mickey Mouse legs. Oh, now we got to put in the one stray nail that sticks out the side of his shoe. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. It's there. It's a very important piece. There we go. Now to build the spine. I'm going to use a piece of wood that'll run right up the spine. And remember those bolts that I used? It's going to tie into those. For the arms, I'm going to use another piece of wood that'll work as the cross arm. So really all the weight of the body will be held by that spine. There we go. Using those bolts, wrapping some wire around it, and then going to glue those in. Finish riveting in the legs so that they don't move. I wanted to make sure that before I did a final rivet that everything was in place. I'm happy with it. So there they go. Those are not moving. Nice and strong. Gluing his spine in. There we go. For the portal to his chest, I'm using an old camera lens hood, and it's from an old camera that I had laying around, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a good opportunity to use it. It's going to fit well. It fit well with the glass lens that I found. Once I get the lens glued in, it's time to start sculpting the heart. Once again, same process, using monster clay. My heart. Hey, settle down. I can't believe it. You try to do a guy a favor, give him a new body, and it's, oh, ouch, oh, wine, oh. Oh, man. Anyway, for the heart, I'm casting it in epoxy, but this time I've added a colorant so that he has a nice red heart. And I'm going to drop that heart now into a mixture of different swirls of epoxy and suspend it in there so it looks like it's suspended in the solution, that whatever that is in his chest. And that mixture all together will give a nice effect when it lights up. You can see the heart in there, and it'll kind of give a glowy silhouette. Be a really nice thing. And once I get the lens glued in, it's time to do a little cleanup with some epoxy putty around the edge, and nothing big. Just put a little detail in there, clean things up, and bake in some rivet details. Good. Now that's all done, it's time to assemble this all together, run the wiring through the body, and time to test this. Ooh, turn on your hot light. Oh, it's a moment. This is a moment. And the moment's over. Okay, back to work. Time to get that arm brace shaped and put in so that it's going to hold the arms and the shoulders. The obligatory sanding of the shiny plastic so that it takes, and then the spinal tap. You have to do a spinal tap apparently. So give him a spinal tap, screw that in so that his body won't move, and as well as rivet. For this part, I'm using just a thick wire. I'm splicing the wire, removing all the plastic off of it. I'm going to use the shielding of the wire as just a trim around the hips to give a decorative trim, clean up that raw edge, and make it look nice. Make it look like it's professionally done or something instead of a cheap raw edge. Priming, of course, and fill in the voids in his hips with a little bit of foam and epoxy putty, just so that so you can't see into the inside. That's all this is trying to get that cleaned up and prepped for paint. Here I'm going to glue in the shoulders. I've ran bolts into those Christmas ornaments, and now glue them in and get that primed and get prepped to screw right into place so that it's strong enough to hold the arms. There we go. Using a little caulk to fill the seams, and this part here is just a pad or a dome that I'm going to put in that I can later place the shoulders onto, or the metal part that goes over the shoulders. That's glued in. For the shoulders, I'm going to use a piece of thick leather. I like using leather for these kind of things because I can shape it and wet it and shape it. Here I'm getting it prepped to stamp, getting it wet, and then using a swivel knife to cut a bevel or cut an edge into it, and then going to use the beveler to bevel it. That'll kind of mimic maybe a kind of a roll in the metal, so give it a better finished edge, much like I did on the hips. There we go. Wetting it, getting it soaked, and shaping it. Here I'll get it shaped and then pin it in place so that it can dry. And putting the base black in. And there he is. Look at that. We've got legs, we have a body, and time to move on. So I'm drilling holes to run some more wiring through his feet, through his body, and try to keep him hidden. You'll see what this effect will be later on. Taking measurements for the collar. The collar is made up of a detergent, like a laundry detergent measuring cup, and took those, just had to set it up to make sure that it was going to fit the curves of the leather properly and sit down right. After boring it out and getting a hole made for the head itself, time to glue that on. After I get it glued on, smooth it out with some caulk, and then it's time to build the little generator pack that goes on his back. Here I'm using a lot of parts taken from that original light fixture, and these are some sort of lids to a squeezy applesauce stuff, and along with some shotgun primers popped in there just for a little bit of giblet, a little extra detail. So there's that pack. It's all built. Some more shotgun primers glued on there for details, and they'll help hold the wires that I'm going to run into from his shoulders to that pack. This is another bracket taken from that light fixture. That's where that bracket will hold on that generator. Holes for the wires to run through. For this wiring, I'm using an old broken telephone charge wire. I liked it because it was old, kind of old-timey, and had a fabric coat covering on it. The only problem was it was black and white, so I did it use a marker and colored it blue and red, just to give it some pizzazz. There's that LE wire, or EL wire, and that's going to be a little special effect that hopefully will turn out on this thing. You guys can let me know what you think once you see the finals. For the insulators that go on his shoulders, I decided, what the heck, I'll use these the insulators right off of the light bulbs. I think those are gonna work great. Be a little kit bash, a little trash bash piece that people will be able to recognize, and yet it blends in quite nicely into the piece. Now that that's all put together, glue that down. Start putting in some googly eye rivets. Of course, got to go with the googly eyes. Lots of them. There we go. All riveted. Sorry about the bad jokes, but if you like the video, please like, subscribe, and share, because sharing is caring. Now this part kicked my trash. I had to sculpt out the letters for auto body that go across his chest. I think it turned out pretty good, but it took a lot longer to do than I expected. I'm getting them set up to cast, just like everything else at Epoxy. As an artist, this is kind of getting to an exciting point in the build. Most of the heavy lifting has been done, and now it's starting to just be the detail work. I can glue in all these pieces. I can put in all the details, and so much of the assembling has been done here. You know, as you can see, just putting on rivets, getting it to look nice. Even beginning to get ready. It's exciting when I can even put the black on like this and get it ready to paint and start to see everything come together. More googly eyes across the waist. Oh, for kneecaps, I found these broken earbuds, and there was these plastic parts on there that were easy to pull off. Just glued them on, roughed them up a little bit with sandpaper, and they look nice. For this next part, I'm going to start building some crates that'll go into for the environment around them. These are just going to be wooden crates, and so I'm using these popsicle sticks as covering. And once I get it all covered, everything glued in, I'm going to use a wire brush. You'll see here, wire brush to bring out the grain in the wood, and that'll help in the painting later on. I made 3 boxes total, and one I tried to build it so I could crush it. I thought it'd be really easy to crush with my hand, but I kind of overbuilt it, and I had to use a hammer to actually break it up. It was quite surprising, but it turned out the way I wanted to once I took the hammer to it. Here I'm putting in some indication of some nails, priming it in black, and then putting a base coat of brown. The black, the brown, and then a gray coat of oxidation, of wear, aging of that wood to make these crates look like they've been out in the weather for a while. Once I get them all painted like that, do some detail work of nail stains, other water stains on there in black and dark browns. Of course, got to do a Fink logo, stencil a Fink logo. That actually took me a long time to cut out that small. It was a real pain. There we go, Fink Manufacturing. There he is, hands and arms, no head, but making progress. Now it's time to really start working on that base. My plan is to kind of have him stepping down off of like from an invisible building we can't see, putting pegs into his feet, something that'll dive down deep into that foam so that he's sturdy and will not tip over or anything, but pretty much be one with that base, but still removable if needs be. Laying out all the brickwork. This took a little time, just trying to make sure that all my bricks were nice and the pattern was correct. A little wire brush to give some extra detail. Of course, put on the respirator mask, using a wood burner just to quickly put in all the grout lines on these bricks. A little cleanup with the rasp and sandpaper. I want to trim this out so it looks like it's got a whitewashed fence around it, kind of that old-timey whitewash look. So that's what the little posts are for. You'll see I'll glue those in. This is going to be the base, just out of masonite hardboard, and put it on little foam pads so that it won't scratch a table. There's those posts. I had a bunch of leftover scraps from more of a real true construction project around the house, and they were already cut thin like that, and they worked really good. For this part, I'm just cutting out a port for some electrical switches that are going to be buried in there, and I want to hide that, so I'm going to put some magnets, glue some washers to it, and then bury some magnets into the foam, and that way it'll just click right in there. Look at that, and it'll be hidden. There we go. See, after getting all my wood pieces on, it's going to be time to finish up a few details and prime this thing. There's onto the black, I'm going with a medium gray, and after the medium gray, going with my whitewash, and that'll give it that patina that I'm looking for, that aged wood that's been painted several times though. I noticed a lot of the brickwork in Columbia has this golden kind of brown look. It's not a red brick. Most of it's golden brick, at least on the ground. For the steps, I'm going to put a golden look into them, and then because I want them to be different, they'll end up being gray, but the colors will kind of tie in. You can see there, put a little bit of that gold. Time to do bunting. When I told my wife I need to make bunting, she looked at me like, "What you talking about, Willis?" And I'm like, bunting. And I had to go through the whole description of what it is and even show her, and she was, "Oh, bunting." So that's a word for today. Bunting. Bunting. Flags and other colorful festive decorations. Maybe my wife was just confused because she never thought I would know what that meant. But anyway, here we go. So after making all my bunting, glued them on. They're going to be a nice little touch, that little flare from Columbia. Here we go. Finally, going to get to put that base paint down. Again, similar paint job to what I've done in previous things. Nice matte iron color. Start topping that off with the metallics, and then go to my rust. There we go, that rust. And like I said, there's a terracotta color that I love to use for this. It works really well. Sometimes I use it in conjunction with other browns and stuff, but it just has a nice pop to it. Paint those in a brass color just to offset all the gray metal. It's coming along, getting closer and closer. trying to assemble those arms. These arms have been off way too long, so I'm using parts from the light bulb again, gluing those on. Here we go. A lot of epoxy and a lot of epoxy putty is going to be used to make sure that these are glued on tight and that they hold. These hands are quite heavy. The arms and the hands and everything all together are quite heavy. Here I'm putting on a little epoxy putty that's going to not only act as a way to hold it all together, but this little O-ring that, so it's going to be a decorative O-ring to make it look like it, to hide the epoxy putty is really what it is. And I was pleased. I was pleased with the way that this all this assembled together. All these parts had been just sitting there for such a long time. If you remember, I mean, it's been early in the video that we started working on these, and so they were sitting for a long time. But I was worried: are they going to fit? Is all my plans going to work together? And it did. It did. There we go. Now, finally, I get to put the hands on. I'm going to screw those right on there. Put those boxes, put the crates in, and see, why are they crushed? He put his hand, he smashed it. And his other hand's going to be reaching out. Look at those. It just, oh, I was so excited when I finally got the hands on it. It was like, oh, this is it. He's finally coming together. It's finally looking like the handyman. It's just been, it was a long time, but, you know. These are going to be the brackets that kind of like the leg brackets. These are arm brackets. They go from the elbow to the wrist joints. And I'm just using a piece of masonite or hardboard, shape them out. Pin them in with brass tacks. If you're doing stuff like this, I would suggest go ahead and invest in brass tacks of various sizes, especially anything that's from this era or steampunk or whatever. Use a lot of them. Here's some tiny ones. For the connectors for the arms, I took the top off of some old spark plugs, and they work well into threading that fabric wire into. And then, of course, painting or using the marker, make them blue and red so they match the wires on top of his shoulders. Now it's time to take the measurements. I got to do some tailor work at this point, and so based on the measurements, start drawing up a pattern. This is going to be a rough pattern that I can use as kind of a piece of dummy fabric for, and then check and make sure there's the dummy fabric. Check and make sure I can make some adjustments. Here, this piece of fabric makes him look like it's kind of a house elf outfit. Look at that, that's kind of janky. But it was able to, with that, I was able to make sure that the measurements were correct and make a more correct pattern that I could then cut out and sew. This fabric that I have took me a long time to find. It took me a while because I had to find something that was the right texture, the right scale, the right color, and also the right pattern, a good herringbone pattern that was actually on the game model and in the concept. I ultimately was able to get it at a thrift store from an old pair of pants, but it took quite a bit. As you can see, I'm trying to distress the material by using sandpaper. That way it exposed the fringe and so forth, and it wouldn't look like I just cut it with scissors. I really like the design of this, the way the fabric is used. A little shout out to the concept artist again, because it's really nice to see this suit. It gives a nice finished look, and yet it doesn't obscure or hide the underlying forms and the details of the model, and I appreciate that. And so it turned out it just turns out really well when it all fits together. The suit finishes it up without covering anything that's important. For sculpting the head, I started out with just the ball, and then start working. Those are ball bearings that I use for the eyes. I use those so that I can sculpt around the eyes without damaging the eyeball. I can do fine details around the eyelids and so forth. A lot of times I work in an additive with this monster clay, to where you can see I just keep layering these little like worms of clay on, and to create the muscles, the bone structure, the skin folds, and don't really scrape those away, just kind of build up. And I'm not blending it towards smoothing in everything. You want to keep that fairly rough until you're ready to smooth in, and here soon I'll start brushing on some mineral spirits with a brush, and you'll see how quickly it starts to blend without killing those nice big forms. See there we go, brushing on the mineral spirits and refining a few things. And then now for the final details, like his bandages, his scars. I'll put a big old notch in his ear where part of his ear was taken out. He kind of has a Frankenstein look, and that's what I was going for. Almost, because the handyman he's sort of a Frankenstein based creature, half man, half monster, much like the Big Daddy. Now it's time to paint the head. How should I paint it? With a brush or with an airbrush? Brush, heads. Airbrush, tails. Always heads. Strange how that is. Now it's time to get that painting going. I'm going to start with the typical black base. I'm giving just a little red in there, but that's really not the important part. The important part is I'm going to build up his face using sort of a portrait painter technique, using cooler tones around the jawline, warmer, ruddy colors across the nose and through the eyes, and then a more yellow tone across the top of the head. You won't see it real well at all times in this the way it's getting filmed, but it'll turn out quite well in the end. Put a little epoxy in the eyes and across the scars too, to give them a little shine. He's sort of an ugly bugger, but it's like the great philosopher Red Green once said: if the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. It's time for the last major piece, the jacket. Here I'm sewing up the two pieces I've cut out, and getting it ironed down, nice and flattened out. Giving a little yellow piping, little yellow decoration with this, just using embroidery thread. I was worried about it. This really needs to fit him well and look right, because even though it's not the most major piece, if it doesn't look good, it could ruin the whole piece. Putting his sleeves on, or what's left of the sleeves. For the buttons, I'm using spent 22 shells. These are going to make nice little brass buttons. I'll put them on his pants, there on his jacket, and then a couple of decorative ones right there in the back. 1, 2. Now, I have a couple of just little final details that I want to put that are going to kind of finish the story of what he's doing and why he's there and why he's so angry. Here's this little sign that I'm building. Free balloons from Better Man's Auto Body and the Handyman. So to make these balloons that he's going to be holding, I'm going to use a ping pong ball along with some epoxy putty. Get them shaped like balloons. Prime them white, just so that, and actually stick them inside balloons, so I have that nice rubber look. I couldn't paint that look in. There's no way I can get that material really to look like a balloon, so just go ahead and use a balloon. Here we go. We have 1, 2, 3, red, white, and blue, and that's what that outreach hand's going to be holding his balloons. Well, I think he's finished. It's time for the final showcase.
Come on down and see the amazing handyman. Is he man? Is he machine? Only Colombian ingenuity could create such an amazing marvel. Step right up and see the 8th wonder wonder of the world. He's big, he's bold, he's the amazing handyman. Only in our fair city will you see such amazing feats of technological prowess.
Look at me! Please, go away!